be reading from a different passage than what's in your bulletin. We're going to be reading from the book of Genesis, and that would be 1:1 through 2:3 if you wanted to follow along with the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was moving over the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, one day. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament and separated the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. And there was evening, and there was morning, a second day. And God said, "Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together in one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit, in which is their seed, each according to its kind upon the earth." And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their own kinds, and trees bearing fruit, in which is their seed, each according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, a third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light upon the earth." And it was so. And God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, a fourth day. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the firmament of the heavens." So God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarm according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth." And there was evening, and there was morning, a fifth day. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds, cattle and creeping things, and beasts of the earth according to their kinds." And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth according to their kinds, and the cattle according to their kinds, and everything that creeps upon the ground according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. And God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. And God said, Behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food. And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was good, very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, a sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God finished his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, because on it God rested from all his work which he had done in creation.
Thank you, Beth, for reading that so beautifully. I know we have a lot of debates about the whole creation thing in the church, but that remains one of the most beautiful passages that there is in the Bible, no matter what we think about it. And even more so, the structure of it. And there is evening and there was morning, the first day and the second day, and God saw it, and God saw that it was good. That refrain that goes through it tells us something profound and important and true about our world, that it is ordered by God, that everything that is in it was created by God and according to God's purposes. And I tell you, it is a comfort to read this passage at difficult times, at scary times, at times when things feel out of control, because it is a profound reminder that everything began in God's created order, that everything that God created was good, that everything that God loved, God blessed. I want to read two other stories. One comes from the book of Genesis, not too far after that. The following one comes from Revelation. Listen now to Genesis 4, verses 1 through 16. Now the man knew his wife Eve, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have produced a man with the help of the Lord. Next she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of the sheep, and Cain a tiller of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel, for his part, brought of the firstlings of his flock their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. The Lord said to Cain, Why are you angry, and why is your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is lurking at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must master it. Cain said to his brother Abel, Let us go out to the field. And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, Where is your brother Abel? He said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? And the Lord said, What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you till the ground, it will no longer yield to you its strength. You will be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. Cain said to the Lord, My punishment is greater than I can bear. Today you have driven me away from the soil, and I shall be hidden from your face. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and anyone who meets me may kill me. Then the Lord said to him, Not so. Whoever kills Cain will suffer a sevenfold vengeance. And the Lord put a mark on Cain, so that no one who came upon him would kill him. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord, and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Now, allow me to share to you from Revelation chapter 21, verses 1 through 7. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "See, the home of God is among mortals. He will dwell with them as their God. They will be his peoples, and God himself will be with them. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for the first things have passed away." And the one who was seated at the throne said, "See, I am making all things new." Also he said, "Write this, for these words are trustworthy and true." Then he said to me, "It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give water as a gift from the spring of the water of life. Those who conquer will inherit these things, and I will be their God, and they will be my children." The word of the Lord. You might have noticed that we're doing things a little bit different from what I had planned when we did the bulletin a couple of days ago. And that is for reasons that are hard to talk about, but important to talk about. We've had a rough week as a nation. Terrorists mailed bombs to prominent Democrats this week. A man in Louisville tried to enter into an African-American church. And when he found that the doors were locked, he went to a grocery store and accomplished his mission there, killing 2 African-Americans before leaving the scene. On his way out, he was confronted by an armed civilian, and he told that person, "Whites don't shoot whites." And yesterday, the congregation in Temple Bethel in Pittsburgh gathered to bless a baby. And a man opened fire, killing 11, including 3 police officers that went towards the danger instead of away from it. Around this time last year, we talked about Las Vegas. 600 people injured, 50 killed. A few months before that, we talked about Charlottesville, when people stood outside a church service with torches. Guys, I'm ready for this. I'm tired. I don't know how to come up in front of other people and try to make meaning of this over and over and over again. When we talked last year about Las Vegas, I talked about lament. And in particular, Psalm 22, which has always been a strength for me. It's the psalm that Jesus quoted on the cross. And then these 2 verses in particular: "All my bones are poured out like water, and my heart is like melted wax. My mouth is like a potsherd, dried up like a potsherd. My tongue sticks to my jaw. You lay me in the dust of death." Once again, I feel laid in the dust of death. When I gave that sermon, I offered up a basic truth, one that we don't. It's easy when you're preaching the lectionary to get caught up in whatever story is going on or whatever big theology point that you can make. And sometimes we miss these basic points. But the fundamental thing, the truth at the heart of the Psalm of Lament, at the heart of the book of Lamentations, is when you call out to God, you proclaim that God hears and God cares. And that is still true. God hears and God cares. It is a fundamental and profound truth about our life and about our world. And as I tried to gather my thoughts last night and this morning, I thought maybe I don't have all the words, but I could start. with just another basic truth. What was the first thing that God created? Light, right. What was the second thing that God created? This is a quiz. A dome in the midst of the waters that separated the waters below from the waters above. That's the second thing that God created. It was a dome, and God called the dome sky. The third thing? Anybody? Already had water. But yes, the land and the water. God called the land, gathered the land together, and gathered the seas together. And the land he called earth, and the waters he called the seas. And the fourth day? The lights. That's right. On the dome, the stars and the sun and the moon. And the fifth day? Living creatures. Fish and birds, specifically. It's interesting. I have no idea why. Fish and birds are on one day and everything else is on another day. But that's the next thing. In the sixth day, people and everything else, the animals. In the seventh day, trick question, right? Rest. When did God create evil? Throughout that story, we see God saw that it was good. And sometimes when we read a story, we hear more, or not more, but we hear something in the absence as opposed to in the presence. And what it tells us, that God declared every single thing in creation good, that God did not separate some time to create evil, is that evil is not intrinsic to our world. This is one of the fundamental attitudes of Christianity. Evil is not a given. It is not predetermined. It's not something that's fundamental to our universe. It does not belong in the world as created by God. And because of that, what that means is that when we approach evil, we don't approach it with stoic with sort of stoic resignation. We don't look at evil the way we look at death and taxes, which we can't avoid. Evil instead is not something that is intrinsic to our world, and therefore evil is something that can be defeated. That's there at the beginning. It's there throughout the Bible, and it's there in the end. Evil is something that can be defeated. Evil is an interloper in our world. Now, if we continue on in Genesis, we hear the story of Adam and Eve in the garden, and there is when we first have to confront evil, right? And it's already there in the garden. The serpent is already there. And what we learn from that is that evil's origin is not humanity. We are among those who were created and declared good. Evil does not come from us. It comes from somewhere else. And then if we go a little bit forward, we get to the story of Cain and Abel. And I did not get Cain and Abel at all until I was 28, I think. And I'm not saying that I necessarily get it now, but as I have read it more and learned more and read it more slowly and more carefully, I have come to recognize that it's not really about why there is evil in the world. That's not the question that it's interested in. It's about what do you do with it? And about what does God do with it? So we know the story, we just heard it, but Cain and Abel are two brothers. They're the first people with real names in the Bible. You know, Adam just means human, and Eve just means woman. And so there's human and there's woman, but now Eve has discovered that she, in partnership with God, can create. And she creates Cain. and Cain's name is, it comes from that root to produce or to create. And Cain and Abel offer up offerings to God. And God likes Abel's and God does not like Cain's. And it doesn't say why. It doesn't. There are a lot of explanations. We've been trying to make some sort of sense of this for, 2,500 or so years. We've tried to make some reasoning for it. And there are people that say, oh, well, Abel gave of the firstlings of his flock. It must be that Cain gave of the lastlings of his field. But it doesn't say that. It just says that God liked Abel's offering and God didn't like Cain's offering. And honestly, I think that's the more true answer than finding some reason for it. Because we all know that the rain falls on the good and the evil alike. If we look around in the world, we know that God has found favor in some and not found favor in others, and we don't know why. And the question for the story is not that question that burns us of why. The question is, what are you going to do about it? And that's what God asks Cain. He says, Cain, why are you angry and why is your countenance fallen? Sin is lurking at your door. You must master it. Its desire is for you. The image there is almost of a monster on the other side of a door, and that you have to stay vigilant. That you have to be attentive and resist the temptation, or it will enter into you. And Cain does not. Cain does not resist that temptation. Instead, he blames his brother for something that is completely unrelated to him. How true is that in our world? How often are we hurt? Are we broken? Are we upset? How often are we angry and our countenance has fallen? And instead of trying to reconcile it, instead of trying to be vigilant against the temptation, we take it out on our brother, our sister, our friend, our neighbor. And that's what he does. He says, let us go out into the field, and while they're out in the field, he kills his brother. And then we have another conversation between God and Cain. And God says, where is your brother Abel? It's almost like what happened just a chapter before when God was walking in the garden and said to Adam and Eve, where are you? And they said, well, we knew that we were naked, so we were hiding. But here Cain gives that response, that famous response, am I my brother's keeper? The answer to that question is easy. The answer to that question is found over and over and over again as we read the gospel together, as we read the Bible together. The answer to that question is yes. Yes, we are. Yes, we do have responsibilities for our siblings, for our brothers, for our neighbors, for our sisters, for our mothers, for our fathers. And God says, what have you done, Cain? Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. All of creation is in solidarity with the victim of violence. And the victim of violence, even in death, cries out to God. What this tells us, that the profound truth that this tells us, is that God, in justice, cries out to God. Pain cries out to God. Suffering cries out to God. And it demands an answer, and that God will provide that answer. This is a profound truth about our world. There is no interaction that is a two-party interaction. God is the third party to every interaction. And when it is cruel, when it is hateful, when it is unjust, God is raised up against the offender. And that's exactly what happens. The ground that Cain polluted by filling it with violence now shuts its mouth to Cain. And here's where it gets kind of hard. Here's the thing that we're maybe not that ready to say or to answer for ourselves. Cain cries out to God, and Cain says, this is too much. Anybody who sees me might kill me. I am hidden from your face, and the ground is closed off to me. Cain has turned from an offender into a potential victim. Because Cain now no longer has a place of sanctuary, no longer has a place of safety. And according to the sort of ancient understanding of tribal rules and tribal law, Cain is now vulnerable to blood vengeance. That if you were to kill another person, the other person's family would be required to take their vengeance upon you. But God does not allow this, because justice is not served by the killing of the killer. Justice is served by restoration. And so Cain, who is the offender, who is the violent, who is the sinner, who holds the evil, who did not resist it, is now also the potential victim. And so God offers protection to Cain. God offers this mark of protection so that anybody who sees Cain knows that even though he has committed this act of deep cruelty and hate, he is still God's. He is still under the blessing of God. This is, for all of us who have not killed anybody, this seems a little bit unfair. For all of us who are not evil, who are not sinners, who are not cruel, this seems a little bit wrong, right? We want to be satisfied with this sort of eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth justice. We don't want Cain to go off scot-free, but for any of us who have done wrong, for any of us who are sinners, for any of us who are unable to resist temptation, who are unable to resist the sin that was crouching at our door, whether it was one time, a long time ago, or even now in this moment, it is heaven sent. There is nothing that can separate us from the love of God. We are always God's. So I got a little bit sidetracked there, but here are the sort of basic truths that we hear there. First, evil does not belong in this world. Evil is an interloper, and evil can be defeated. And God is at work defeating evil from the beginning of time to the end of time. We've been going through Genesis, we're in chapter 4. I realize we've been running out of time, so I'm going to skip a couple chapters. And go to Revelation. Revelation is the end, right? And Revelation is a book that we are baffled by, just absolutely baffled by, because it makes so very little sense, and it has this incredible, intense, and vivid imagery, and we've heard all of these sort of crazy conspiracy theory stories about it, and certainly the various apocalyptic end of the world type movements really have sort of pulled on it. But Revelation is really, it's not as complicated as we make it out to be. It is not some vision of the far future. It is about what was going on in that time. I mean, it is talking about a vision of the future, but it's really about what was going on for the people of God during the reigns of Nero and Vespasian and Domitian, three of the greatest persecutors of the Christian church in sort of the Roman era, especially in the Roman era. We know Nero was famous for fiddling while Rome burned. He was also famous for using Christians as torches to light the games following that fire. So this was a dark and difficult time. And it is about a vision of the future, kind of like, I'm gonna sound really literate, but I'm not. I've not read this. Arthur Miller's The Crucible is about the Salem witch trials, but really it's about McCarthyism. I know this because I listened to a podcast about Marilyn Monroe, and I think she dated Arthur Miller for a it's about the Salem witch trials, but it's really about what's going on here and now. And pretty much every literature has that seep into it, right? What's going on in the here and now has an effect on your perspective on history. And what was going on in the then and now had an effect on the vision that John offers to the churches of all of these places. And here's the challenge that they're dealing with. This is a time of incredible persecution, and the churches are crumbling. In different ways, some are suffering under persecution and they're falling apart. Others, and these are the ones that sort of John of Patmos has his strongest words, others are not being persecuted. And they're not being persecuted because they're not bearing witness to the truth. They've fallen away from faith because they are afraid. And the book of Revelation uses this incredible, this intense, this vivid imagery to paint a picture of that same truth that we heard at the beginning of the book, that evil does not belong in this world and that evil can be defeated. And so all of this imagery of the dragon and the seven seals is a reminder, is a proclamation that God is in control of the world. Even now, Christians in Laodicea and Pergamum and all of these various cities, even now when the world looks so dark, when the world looks so out of control, even now, the world is under God's control. Evil is not of God's creation. Evil can be defeated, and evil is being defeated by the Lord our God. And I don't know how many people read Revelation here because it's so baffling, but does anybody know what the main image in the book of Revelation for the conqueror of evil is? I'll give you a hint. It is the Lamb of God. It's that same truth that we encounter in Cain and Abel. It is not more violence poured out in a cycle of cruelty and blood and hatred. It is instead the faithfulness of the humble servant who lives and dies for others. That is who conquers. That is what conquers. That is love. And love conquers all. And the closing of the book, it's just as beautiful as the beginning. Because it proclaims once more to our sin-darkened hearts, to our terrified selves, that God is in control and that God, in the end, will win. Will redeem not just the perfect, not just the peaceful, the holy, the winners, but every tear will be wiped away. Everyone will be restored into this new creation, the new Jerusalem that God has made. And God will dwell among mortals because that is where God belongs. In creation with all of us. In fulfillment of this power of love and peace and grace that is the power which defeats evil. Friends, if you are hurt, if you are suffering, this is the word to you. Your tears will be wiped away. If you have no place to lay your head, if you are a wanderer in the earth and cannot find a friend, God is your protector. God is your redeemer. God is your friend, and you will dwell with him in the city, with God in the city of in the New Jerusalem. In everything that we do, this is our worldview as people of faith, that evil does not belong in this world, that evil can be defeated, and that love, living and dying for each other in faithful and humble obedience to God, is what conquers. All we need do is join him on that path which leads to purpose. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost.